Hey, what's up, Good Life? Thanks for joining me for today's 128 moment. Last Sunday, as we continued our Believe sermon series, walking through the Gospel of John, we studied a passage where Jesus presented the case for himself in what amounted to an impromptu courtroom scene. And he made the case for who he is and for why he came and for why we should believe. And when it was all said and done, I think we landed on an inescapable conclusion that in the case Jesus made, he eliminated any notion of the possibility of neutral ground about himself. He's either everything he says he is and we should believe in him wholeheartedly, or he's a complete liar and a lunatic and he's nothing. But we also confronted at the end of that passage, we confronted an unavoidable reality that just because you believe in Jesus doesn't mean you aren't trying to live on neutral ground. And we looked at 5 signs where we might be trying to live on neutral ground when it comes to Jesus. And if you weren't able to join us last week, I encourage you to go back and check that sermon out. But today in this 128 moment, I want to share just one more sign with you that we might be trying our best to cling to neutral ground when it comes to living for Jesus. And here it is. When it comes to your faith, you would rather blend in than live set apart. There are several factors that might contribute to this behavior. It might just be shyness. It might be feeling like you don't have all the answers. It might be that you place a really high value on your comfort zone, or maybe you're fearful in these times of being canceled by the cyber mob. And while each of those factors might be common, it doesn't make them constructive. Because every time we try and blend in, we need to remember that from a biblical perspective, there is no such thing as private faith. The life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus demand and deserve far more than silent belief. The Great Commission, it leaves no room for sitting in the stands and watching it all unfold. Matthew 28, Jesus tells us to go and make disciples of all nations. In Acts 1, he says, you'll be my witnesses across the street and around the world. And there are no silent witnesses. In any court case, the witnesses are set apart on the stand in order for them to speak out. So if you're saved, Jesus didn't die so that you can blend in. Jesus died and rose again to set you apart from a world that desperately needs to hear the good news about him. And part of being set apart is actually being different from the world around you as well. We're called to be in the world, making Christ known, but not of the world, looking and acting and believing just like they do. But in so many ways, that's what the modern church is doing. They look at the Bible and they try and pick and choose the beliefs they think will fly in these modern times. In trying to blend in and living on neutral ground, they're taking the will of God and trying to make it conform to the will of the modern world. But following Jesus is not an a la carte proposition. Jesus endorsed the whole Bible, and we have to embrace it too. We're not doing the world any favors by whiting out portions of God's will in order to be popular with the world. It's anything but loving to call good evil and evil good, if Scripture's been clear about it. So Good Life, if you're saved, then you've been set apart by God to stand out to the world, stand out from the world, to love enough to point the world to Jesus. And that requires a public faith, a faith that aligns with biblical truth. So are you trying to blend in and live on neutral ground, or is your faith public in that you are standing out because the love of Christ at work in you is overflowing out of you? I hope that encourages you and challenges you today. Hopefully you'll be able to join us on Sunday as we gather at 9:30 and 11 in person and 11 o'clock online. We'll be continuing our sermon series in the Gospel of John, looking at an awesome passage, and we'll also come together to celebrate the Lord's Supper. So hopefully be able to see you then. Until then, let's be a people who are set apart, who stand out, and who will love enough.